So it was around about kind of lockdown time when COVID hit and everyone was kind of indoors looking for things to do, that I found myself watching loads of Everest-based documentaries on all your streaming services, and it really captured me. I found it fascinating, just what the lengths that people will go to climb mountains. And the thing about Everest is that a lot of these people don't necessarily have to be experienced climbers. So I thought, well, I'm not experienced by any stretch of the imagination, in fact hardly at all. I'm not going to do Everest, obviously, so what else is there out there that would potentially be very, very challenging but more achievable? So I did a bit of research online. I narrowed our options down to Mont Blanc. It's a proper climb. It's in the snow, it's in the ice, it's kind of like a mini Everest.
You got to remind yourself to look.
It encounters a lot of similar things,
but
at a much more achievable level. At 5,000 metres, it's still a big, big climb with altitude and all that. But it also doesn't take that long, and for things like Everest, it can take weeks and months. Whereas this was just, you could squeeze this into a week, and it just ticked a lot of boxes. So I mentioned it to a couple of my pals, and Gary and Mark jumped on board without even a moment's hesitation. Gary loves his mountains. We've done loads of Monroe hill climbs together, and Mark, he's naturally fit. He runs loads, and he's always up for a challenge, and he thought it would be a brilliant idea as well. So with the enthusiasm from those guys and the research that I'd done, we were jumped on the chance. And well, that was 2 years ago, and yeah, a couple of weeks ago we went to Chamonix to try and achieve our dream.
And we've arrived. Here we are. Look what's behind me. Chamonix, Mont Blanc, highest mountains in Europe. A couple of days. Are we up there?
I can't believe how far down that glacier comes.
I know, eh?
Another thing that we had to factor in was the actual altitude and the possibility that our bodies might not be able to deal with being at those heights. 4,800 metres is 4 times just about the height of Ben Nevis, and the altitude sickness can be a factor. So what we were advised to do was, because we got there on the Saturday, the tour started on the Sunday, so they said that we should go up the cable car and experience those heights, because the cable car goes up to 3,800 metres. So they told us to, if we can, go up there, stay up there for as long as possible, become familiar, or let your body get used to that altitude, to give you as good a chance as possible of managing the training through the week, but ultimately the actual Mont Blanc summit attempt itself. Because even though we didn't really have any experience with altitude, they really hit home the fact that it would affect you, and it would affect everybody in some shape or form. So hopefully it wasn't too much to actually impact our ability to reach the summit itself. It turned out it was fairly straightforward day. They didn't throw us into the deep end, that's for sure. We walked along the kind of rocky surface of the glacier for a couple of kilometres, which was actually quite tricky, because there was a kind of a sheen of ice underneath a layer of rocks, where if you just didn't put your feet in the right spot, then you could easily slip. We didn't have any crampons or anything at this point. So we walked for a couple of kilometres along this kind of rocky, moon-like surface, and to the main exposed ice area itself, where we then put on our crampons, harnesses. Fortunately, the 3 of us had done that at a training course in the Cairngorms in March, so we had a basic idea, but it was good to kind of familiarise yourself with it again. So the guy just showed us how to use crampons, how to walk with the crampons, and we walked up the glacier to small slopes and climbs and descents, just to get used to the techniques involved with using crampons, because ultimately at the end of the week, those little climbs that we were doing then would be massive climbs up massive heights, which we had to be sure we were capable of doing, at least from a basic technique point of view. Although there was one part of that day on the glacier which really put a fear in us initially. While the drop itself was maybe 30 feet, something like that, it was just ice like that, and we kind of looked over the edge. We couldn't see the bottom because it almost like it lipped under, and we're saying to ourselves, is he going to expect us to go down there, or is it going to be a rappelling, so you've got the rope and you're kind of going down backwards? And then he got out his equipment and he put the ice pegs in, and so we knew that there was going to be some sort of ropes involved, and he showed us exactly what was going to be required of us, and it wasn't going down backwards. We were having to go down forwards, and going down forwards down a vertical drop, and we're like, the nerves were like, oh man. So I wasn't going first, that's for sure. One of the other guys, it wasn't one of us three that went first, and it looked tough as hell. So we had the rope, and so the guy had it, so it was fairly safe, but we were basically just facing straight down this near vertical slope, basically getting used to crampons, and the purpose of it was to show us how strong crampons can be, and in all fairness to us all, we all managed to get down, and also we had to learn to climb up that same vertical slope. So not only was it hard going down, it felt more natural going up because you were able to haul yourself rather than gravity just like pulling you down. It was 100% worthwhile. Nonetheless, it certainly got the heart fluttering for a few minutes, that's for sure.
Whoa!
Day two was a day that I will never ever forget. It'll live long in the memory, purely because of where we found ourselves so soon after actually putting our gear on. We ended up taking that same cable car. So it's a tourist cable car. It takes you up 3,800 metres. It's called the Aiguille de Midi. There's people milling around. There's a museum. There's a glass box that you can kind of get your picture taken in. There's restaurant, cafe. But there's also kind of round the back and through a couple of little passages. There's the mountaineering section. It's just this big ice circle that you put all your gear on and you disappear through, basically into oblivion, and it's just drops everywhere, thousands of feet. It's just white with your rocks and your peaks, and you're like, oh, and you just suddenly realise what you're going to be doing. And panic's not the right word, because we were roped in, we had a guide, so they had us secure, but to say that we were out of our comfort zone was the understatement of the century.
Oh shit, fucking bad. Hand or no hand?
Hand if you want, yes.
I've got the GoPro footage, which kind of proves that point, and in all fairness to the GoPro, it does give a fairly good indication of just what we were doing. Within 10 minutes of having our gear on and I still not know what's coming, we were kind of atop this ridge, just like a Toblerone, just like that, and we were just walking along this ridge. Ice, snow, I can't explain in words how it felt. It felt so unnatural, but we just had to block out the steep drops. I mean, I looked over my left down to my left, and Chamonix was just this tiny. I was like I was on an aeroplane. Chamonix was just down there,
only on what's
and
in
this
front.
glacier was down there, and it was like breathe, focus, and you just had to just man up almost, and ignore what was down there for what we're asked to do, and then just make our way along, and got to the end, and it was just the relief was
Alright.
indescribable. Just couldn't believe what we'd done. So you'll see the GoPro videos just to prove that point. After a bit of relative respite from that initial ridge walk, we descended and walked along a plateau, and we just followed the guide, wherever he wanted to take us. We ended up going towards this kind of rocky outcrop. It didn't look too intimidating. He said we were going to head over there, which seemed fine with the idea of climbing some rocks after doing that icy ridge was not a bad idea. But within a couple of minutes, we were almost back to the same feeling as when we were going across the ice ridge. We kind of went around the corner and gradually climbing up these rocks, which they were fairly grippy rocks in fairness. We didn't have our crampons on anymore. They were tucked away in a bag. Our boots were pretty strong, but the rocks they didn't seem like one big huge kind of mountainous rock. It was lots of individual boulders kind of crammed into one another, and they were stable enough, but you could see gaps in between them. So it wasn't like one big solid mass. So that was a bit unnerving, but initially it was fine. The higher we got and the more we got round the corner, we realised the more we're nearing towards another ginormous drop down to our left. It was just the same as before. It just cascaded down. If you'd slipped, there was no chance, absolutely no chance. And the fear just set in again. It was totally different to the ice, because the ice it was 1 foot in front of the one, so it was fairly military in the way you were putting your feet. But with the rocks, it was more exciting, but nonetheless equally as unnervy. You've got your hands and you're clambering up, your feet are as high up as you can go, you're feeling your muscles just stretching beyond anything that you've probably done before. All at the same time, this huge drop down to the left. And in fairness, a big enough drop down to the right as well, it wasn't as far. And again, the GoPro footage that I've got just shows you when you're clambering up rocks and you get over an edge and you can see this gap just through, just a drop to oblivion. It's just, we're just so not used to that, and again, so out of our comfort zone. And yeah, it had to be done though, that's the thing, it had to be done because that was the type of terrain that we were having to cover when we were climbing Mont Blanc itself. So not only were we having to learn how to navigate those types of terrain, the guides also had to assess us to make sure that we were capable of actually climbing Mont Blanc under similar circumstances. So while it was exceptionally nervous for us, and yeah, again, not panicky, but we just had to deal with it and suppress all these nerves. It had to be done. It just had to be done, and it was an epic day. One we'll never ever forget. But I was super happy when we got back to the relative safety of the Aiguille de Midi kind of mountain hut area, and ultimately back down to Chamonix for a relaxing pint at the end of it. A third training day was more of a means to an end day. That's a bit unfair actually. Again, we went up to the Aiguille de Midi peak, and we took another cable car across to Italy, hiked across a snowy plateau, and it was a case of climbing this big rocky escarpment. Again, because of the rock climbing that we were doing over these training days, it did give us an idea that a good chunk of the Mont Blanc climb would involve rocks. It's not all just snow and ice. So that was good in that it gave us more experience with the rock climbing aspect. Our mate Mark met our guide Marco for the first time. He'd be the guy who would be taking us up Mont Blanc, so that was very helpful. And again, he was able to assess our abilities and get an idea for himself how it would be like taking us up to the Mont Blanc summit. So not a whole lot to discuss on day 3. It was just more of the same, albeit not quite as severe as the Tuesday.
Mont Blanc in the background with you.
Gary, you need to start saying it right.
Okay, and it's Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc.
Grassy.
Mount. Like Mount Florida. It's Thursday morning. It's our first day of our 2-day summit attempt. Mont Blanc. Glorious morning. So we've got about a 4-hour hike up to the Goûter hut and 1 or 2 kind of iffy bits along the way, but I'm sure they'll be fine. Italian guides are running late, so they're going to catch up, and it's really happening. It's really happening. There's the guys.
Yeah, with this little overcast that we have, it'll be
Ready to rock and roll, eh?
for now.
There's a little building just on the right side of the top. That is the Goûter hut, and that is where we're sleeping tonight. Climbing all the way up there today. Awesome.
Well, we weren't actually climbing from Chamonix all the way up to Mont Blanc. While that was doable, it was just taking too long, certainly for the period of time that we had over in Chamonix itself. So we got a cable car and a mountain train up as high as 2,300 metres. So basically we had 2,500 metres to climb over the space of a day and a half, something like that. Which is still 2 Ben Nevises, so it's still a fair undertaking in itself, particularly at altitude where it gets much more tricky to do anything basically. The first part was a glorified hike actually. We didn't need any ropes or anything the first couple of hours.
Right, Sinkit. Fixing your boots.
I'd done that one a bit too tight. It was just tight on the bottom of the shin. All good now.
That's it, 3,000 metres.
Next one. At the top. Can't run that.
There
It is. First view in.
That's what it is. Not too far.
We hiked up to the Tête Rousse mountain hut,
Oops. Right,
which
guys.
is right at the bottom of the Goûter, what's called the Goûter main climb. It's a steep rock face, 600 metres, which we could see from a distance, and we're like, that's why we've been training to do the rock climbing, because of the climbing up this big Goûter mountain. It was quite intimidating. So the first part of the day was fine. Stopped at the Tête Rousse hut for a little while, and then we all got roped up. We didn't need crampons on by this point because it was all about rocks. And yeah, I was looking forward to this part, but with trepidation, because it just looked impossible from where we were standing. 600 metre climb, almost vertical. It's going to take a lot out of you, and it did. There's one particular section of that called the Goûter Couloir, which is notorious for rockfall amongst the whole mountaineering community, particularly anyone who goes to the Alps and Mont Blanc. Very dangerous, particularly at the height of the day when the sun comes round and kind of melts the mountainside, and the rocks would typically stick in the ice and stop them from from dislodging and falling down the mountain, but because this year had been so hot, it was never happening, and rocks was continuously just coming down and down, so we had to be very, very careful. Made sure we did it at the right time of day, not just going up but also on the way back down, so we had to deal with it twice.
Bo, say Bo.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
No. Oh, heesh.
But we managed it, and the climb itself was hard. It was really hard.
Is that you?
All the way up.
Depressurizing. I had an omelette last night. You're playing to the Guta. It's pushing me up the hill. Excuse me, man.
Oh, sorry, bud.
Right, season a bit.
Aye, we'll keep our distance.
4 eggs you had last night.
4 eggs, come on.
An omelette.
Is that
Did you get a double omelette?
Aye, 4 eggs I put in it. Aye.
You're a dirty bastard. What a savage.
I feel like Frodo Baggins climbing the misty mountains. Eh? Oh, it's sinky. Read Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I didn't. I've got that route to get down my last.
Thought you might have seen the films actually.
No.
Looks like a caravan up there.
That's what I've been looking at all the way up. Looks like something at Derby, but Island.
I'm going to grate when we get to this hut, by the way.
I'm going to save my fear for the top.
Is that camera on, Marco?
Hi there.
Is that on?
Yep.
Well done.
Well done.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that was a good section, eh?
Man alive.
Found that hard.
Emotional. Emotional? Good. You're getting all emotional now?
I was so relieved to get to the top and then walk along the ridge to the Guti mountain hut, or the refuge hut, and have a few hours rest to recharge the batteries and just refocus for the actual summit itself. So we'd made it halfway, we just had to do the second part in the early hours of the morning. While we were at the mountain hut, we were expected to rest as much as possible. Again, get our bodies used to the altitude. But when you're expected to sleep and rest in an environment where there's so many other people there, it's kind of like a youth hostel, bunks and bunks, and everyone goes to bed at the same time. It's silly hours as well, like you're going to bed at 8 to get up at 2. And there's so much noise, and there's smells, and it goes against any idea of sleep. But it was just a case of just resting your eyes and resting your body to prepare yourself for the following morning.
Ready for the off, Sinky? Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Anxious.
Come on.
So the alarm went off at 2, we set off at 3, it was pitch black, you had your head torch on, but all there was just a little light in front of you. It didn't really give you any concept of what was surrounding you. So we just had to follow the guide, put one foot in front of the other, and we could tell it was steep. There was still 1,000 metres to climb, Every step was up and up and up, no respite. It was up, up, up. And when you're at that height, at that altitude, with the air so thin, your whole body's craving oxygen to give it the energy to just keep going. It just felt so alien. You just feeling so tired without feeling tired. It was strange. You knew you were fit enough, but just something was stopping us from galloping away into the distance. So it was so slow. It was just such a slow pace. And because it was dark, it was just such like sensory deprivation. There was nothing to keep your mind going. It was freezing cold as well. It was -15 and the wind was getting up. We knew that it was forecast, so I was a little bit nervous as to how windy it was going to get. It was just such an alien kind of environment. But we knew, just follow the guide, keep focused. Eventually it'll get daylight. The sun was coming up, and the colours that were just surrounding us, because we were at the peak, everything was down the way, and there was nothing obstructing our view. It was just this silhouette of us being at the top, and it was absolutely epic. You don't have the words to explain how it felt. And we just had to try and take as many mental images as possible, because we just couldn't stay up there for long. We only had 5 or so minutes before it just got too cold. But fortunately, my phone was working still, and I got it out, took a Facebook live video. We had 4G up there, and took it out for a few seconds, said our thing and celebrated, and put it away.
We're at the top of Mont Blanc! Yes! Oh man! Yes! Oh! We're there! Oh, see, taking my gloves off for that 30 seconds. Sorry, I've given myself frostbite, man.
Oh. Is it?
Minus worse than I've ever had.
Where's the beauty hat?
It was only for about 30 seconds. My hand, I couldn't feel it. Glove quickly on it. I swear it was about 45 minutes before I got any feeling back in my hand. It was that cold. So given the conditions, we had to just come off the mountain as quickly as we could. And we had to go all the way back down. So yeah, we summited, but it's not just about getting to the top, it was also about getting back down to the bottom safely. But we did it, we managed the couloir, no problem, and it was still early enough in the day. Back down to the train for about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we'd managed it, we'd done it, we celebrated at the top. Not every single group that gets to try and climb Mont Blanc actually manages it, so we were lucky that the conditions allowed us to reach the top. So we had a good night in Chamonix, a couple of pints and a curry to celebrate. Just like that, we've done it, we were back home, and yeah, it was just the most phenomenal experience. That whether or not I do it again remains to be seen, but I'm quite sure that we'll do something similarly adventurous in the years to come.